First oral question, Baroness Hayter of Kentish Town.
I beg leave to ask the question standing in my name on the order paper.
It is for international federations to determine the rules for their sports at the international level. The government has had no discussions with the IOC, BOA or boxing authorities about gender eligibility in sport in relation to the highly speculative reports my noble friend's question relates to and repeats. Our sports councils have produced guidance providing domestic sports bodies with a framework to set their own policies for who can participate in their sports.
Well, I regret that answer, which obviously means the government is not particularly concerned. Whilst what happened in Paris affected women at the very top of their game, we will have fewer elite women if they have to compete against born men at grassroots level. Whether in fencing, cricket, football or snooker, we're seeing sports bodies, British sports bodies, dithering as to whether it's fair or safe for born women to compete against born men with all their inherent physical advantages. So could my noble friend the Minister discuss with all the sporting bodies how they propose to protect women's sports at all levels in regards to safety and fairness to ensure we develop a future crop of British female Olympians?
So I'm going to repeat the reason why the government hasn't had any discussions with the IOC, BOA or boxing authorities about this particular highly speculative report that my noble friend's question relates to. And it is because, as I say, it is highly speculative and not likely to, I mean, we can't just discuss things just because there is high speculation in the media about issues.
My Lords, would the government agree with...
It's not prepared to have discussions with the Olympic Committee. Might she have discussions with her parliamentary colleagues who seem intent on practising boxing on the streets of our country in the early hours of the morning?
The noble lord raises a matter that is, I assume, also subject to considerable speculation in the media, and I would suggest is a matter for a Commons whip, not a Lord's whip in this instance.
My lords, I confess I was surprised to see this question posed by my noble friend in the way it is on the order paper, based on an inaccuracy as it is. Both the women who competed in the Olympics were born as women, lived as women, competed as women, neither identified as a different gender from what they were assigned at birth. However, they were subjected to shameful, racist and prejudicial online harassment and media intrusion. Does my noble friend the Minister agree with me that this House should not in any way add to the inaccurate and cruel speculation and should indeed support the IOC stated ruling on this matter?
So I agree that it doesn't feel particularly helpful for your Lordship's House to be debating a matter based on speculation rather than on fact. And it is ultimately up to the international federations to determine their rules for their sports at the international level of competition, and Olympic boxing was in this instance a matter for the IOC.
Thank you, thank you, Noble. My Lords, this is a very odd one. The IOC, the Olympic Committee, Organising Committee, have twice passed both these athletes. Once when they weren't going to win medals, and once when they did. Also, that the body that actually raised the sanction against them has been thrown out as the organising body for boxing. Would the government say that they will back the IOC over a body that on review was found to have had years of financial mismanagement, rule breaking within the ring, and no bad training for its judges and officials? Surely we're going to go with the IOC on this one.
I don't believe I've said anything that suggests that we would go against the IOC on this one. And in relation to the international governance around boxing, a new international federation, World Boxing, was established in 2022 and now has 42 member national federations, including England, Scotland, Wales, and a number of our like-minded coalition on the issues relating to Russia and Belarus sport issues.
My lords, the International Olympic Committee has been very clear that all the women who competed in the female boxing category at this year's Olympic Games were born as women, lived their whole lives as women and comply, I quote, with the competition's eligibility and entry regulations. So this is not therefore a question about trans athletes' participation in competitive sport. I welcome the approach the Noble Baroness the Minister's taken. Would she agree with me that this is rather an example of an international governing body regulating its sport independently, and join me in sending congratulations to all the men and women who represented their countries at the Olympic Games this summer?
Absolutely, and I would wholeheartedly join the Noble Lord in congratulating all those who were successful in their respective sports during the summer.
My Lords, isn't this more about...
I very much thank the Minister for her answers to the questions so far and the manner in which this debate has taken place. Does the Minister agree that we would need to see an increase in the level of scientific understanding around gender and sporting participation through further research and a building up of the scientific evidence base, such that sporting governing bodies, rather than a government, are able to make informed decisions when balancing inclusion with athlete safety, rather than resorting to social media in these cases?
Absolutely. I would agree with the Noble Lady that social media is not an appropriate way of assessing athletes' eligibility to take part or participate in sports. Our sports councils have produced guidance providing domestic sports bodies with a framework to set their own policies for who can participate in their sports. Their guidance, which I read in preparation for this question, is very pragmatic and based on where we are as a society, and was published after extensive consultation and a review of the existing scientific research. The guidance recognises that there needs to be different solutions for different sports, and the needs of all groups must be considered.
My Lords, this all about fairness, safety and equality for women in sport. And does the Minister, Noble Lady the Minister, not agree with me that the only way we can have real equality for women's sport is for women in those different sports to be able to compete separately from men and who do not wish to compete against men?
So the Sports Council guidance recognises the need for solutions for different sports based on the points that the Noble Lady raises, and they found two diametrically opposed camps, which I think are reflected in the Chamber today when it came to inclusion of trans women. And the guidance found that you can't easily reconcile inclusion with fairness and safety in relation to sport, and it is more straightforward with male sport. The Sports Council also recognised, which I feel strongly this your Lordship's House should as well, that society is changing, and simply keeping the existing arrangements in sport won't accommodate inclusion and actually won't serve anyone well.
My Lords, my Lord.
Whether the Noble Lady is aware of a United Nations study published in August called Violence Against Women and Girls in Sport, which calculated that by March this year, over 600 female athletes in more than 400 division events across 29 sports were defeated by trans-identifying men who took a total of over 890 medals from female athletes. Does the Noble Lady, the Minister, think that this is fair?
I'm not aware of that report. I will read it and respond to the Noble Lady in writing.
My Lords, will the Minister assure the House that the Government will take action to ensure that biological men cannot in future compete in female category sports at level below Olympics as well as the Olympic level?
So the Sports Council's guidance recognises, and I repeat, that there does need to be different solutions for different sports. It isn't a matter of the government dictating to the Sports Councils how they should address it. And I think I'll revert to that actually the Sports Councils and the sports themselves need to assess the situation, and they do need to take into account difference between the different sports and make appropriate recommendations for their own sports based on up-to-date research.